Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Emily Wishaw with Wishaw Wellness Live in Alignment, here doing my April of 2018 interview series with women leaders, and here with Rebecca Abraxas. I've known Rebecca for a little while now, a couple years, and recently did a 6-week class with her called Sing Yourself Free. Rebecca is a Holy Fire Reiki master. She's a holistic voice coach and a positive musician. And one of the things I really appreciate, and then I'll let Rebecca speak more, is that in the class that I did with her, I don't consider myself a singer, but I enjoy singing. And she was always re-emphasizing to sing for expression versus impression. And I think that that's a really nice, and my reflection of you and your work, like synopsis kind of what you do.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear a little bit kind of what has led you to this path of bringing this energy work with the music work and the voice lessons and all of that, and how does that integrate, and what brought you there?
My story is that I was just a really, really shy little girl, and yet I had this huge inner calling to sing. And I mean, I was so shy, I'd be called on in school, and I'd get into a cold sweat. I'd be like, oh, and then the teacher would be like, we can't hear you, can you tell us the answer again? I'd be like, it'd be awful. But so through the years I was just really called to sing. And so by the time I was, I guess, in my 20s, I grabbed a guitar, taught myself the guitar, and just started making up songs. But before that happened, I also was very into kind of the human potential movement. I have a degree in exercise and sports science.
Right.
And
we have the
wellness.
same degree.
Yeah. And so I have this wellness degree, and I've always been interested in human potential and consciousness work. So as I started singing and finding my voice, I started to notice that it started freeing up my shyness, and it started to open me up, and I started to get more confident. And so one was playing off the other, and then I started to write songs around that journey and became a positive musician, because that's what was alive in my life with those songs. So really it's been like a 25-year journey of just expanding consciousness and wellness and my voice, and they've kind of gone hand in hand. I have a certification in yoga, and I've done a lot of study with yoga therapy. So I've noticed with my yoga practice, I would do like an hour, 2 hours of yoga, and then just marinate in the stillness and the quiet. And then from there, I noticed my voice would open up and even more.
Interesting.
After my yoga practices, and I started to get very curious about that, around, what's up with the silence and releasing resistance with this yoga, that all of a sudden it just opens my whole vocal instrument up, and I was ready to share even more my voice and my songs. So and so through the years I've just done a lot of exploring with a lot of blogging and a lot of offering coaching sessions, helping people just find their voice from this kind of contemplative place.
And it's so healing.
It's so healing.
Yeah. And I love how it seemed like it just was really natural, and you weren't seeking it, how the blend of what you were doing in the human potential movement with the music, and how that just naturally helped with that shy little girl and helped her find her voice and step up and be heard. I'm curious, because I don't actually know, what is it, positive musician? What does that mean?
Well, there's a whole movement in music. I think they're even moving toward a Grammy category.
Oh,
positive music. So I call it positive music.
I'm so unfamiliar. No idea. Very cool.
Yeah, it's not like in like at the Grammys in the when you're watching the TV show, but there's a whole movement called positive music. There's different radio stations. There's different awards and stuff like that you can get with positive music. It's a whole genre of music now.
And what is that genre?
It's music that uplifts, music that's inspiring, expanded consciousness,
Cool.
that has an inspirational message.
I'm going to have to look on Spotify, be like, is there a positive music playlist? It sounds nice.
It's slow going, I think,
Yeah.
but it's definitely out there. And when I try to explain my music to people, just saying folk,
it's more than that.
It's just different than folk. The stories are about spiritual transformation and spiritual tools and stories of personal growth. Usually almost all my songs have that kind of flavor to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I going back to kind of because the work you've done in the yoga therapy, and I appreciate what you shared with us of after your yoga practice and sitting in the stillness, and that the music would come or the song would come after, and I can relate to that. I can't say that that's been my experience with the music or the song, but several years ago now, 5-6 years ago, I lived in a yoga center for 6 months, and not only was doing eating very clean, very sober lifestyle, the 9 p.m. to 5 or 10 p.m. bedtime, 6 a.m. like every night consistently, like yoga almost every day, meditation, just really. It was wonderful. It was a little bubble. But I remember, and I recently found this little slip of paper in a folder of mine. It was a poem I had written that I had forgotten about, and I would get downloads all the time of poetry, of lines, of words, and I find that even this weekend I just took myself and had a weekend away, and the more still I get, the more that comes through.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating, particularly after doing some sort of movement practice of doing yoga, moving your body, and then sitting and being.
It sure does, and that was my experience too. And I feel like once you kind of empty the vessel a little bit,
maybe
the
that's
resistance, and then all of a sudden there you are. There's more of you to tune into and to focus on, and I feel like that's what was happening with me and my, tuning into that inner sound, which is the silence. And is also the creative voice that comes through too. So it's the inner silence and the inner sound unfolds the beauty of the outer sound, and it's just this beautiful communion.
Cool. Yeah, and I love that there you are.
Yeah.
Because I think that ultimately, that's what most of us want, is to be that full expression of who we really are, our higher self. And how can we be there? So I mentioned beginning of this interview that I did Rebecca's 6-week Seeing Yourself free class, which I'd love to share a little bit about, because it was particularly going through the middle of that when I was inspired. I was like, I need to interview Rebecca. Her work is so interesting because I'm all about the body. Everything I do is body-based. And what I found in that class is you really, we did a lot of vocal toning, so making different sounds and really paying attention to where we felt it in our body. And I just, anything you want to share on that?
Sure. So my experience with my own voice was that I started to sense, after the yoga, the yoga practice or the contemplative practice of just being in the presence of the stillness, you start to really hone into your body awareness and your sound awareness within your body. So vocal awareness is learning to just express yourself and know where you are in space and time, and know your inner environment. So for example, if you're singing and you're like, this feels a little different today, what's going on? You can start to tune into how open your throat is, or if you feel restricted in your diaphragm or your lungs, and you can start to be like, what tone am I hearing? Am I angry? Am I sad? And you start to have this awareness of your whole inner environment, mind, body, and spirit, through the voice.
Awesome.
So it's a really cool practice.
It's a great tool for integrating the mind, body, and spirit.
Totally.
And I think that's why I wanted to do this class. I think that the voice is so healing, it's so powerful, and yet I don't let myself sing in front of people. Even when I would sing, there was 6 of us or so in the class, and just by myself in front of them, in front of Rebecca, in front of teacher, I was like, I needed to impress. So interesting what came up for me, and the resistance around that and the block. And say I'm alone in my car, I can belt it out fine, and it feels so good. It's so freeing because we're totally opening up the throat, letting. What did you share before we started recording, Rebecca? You shared the flute analogy.
Yeah,
which is so appreciated. Flute.
Yeah. So we're this open flute. The voice is an extension of our spirit or energy body, and when we are open in an open flute, we don't have any resistance to singing. We just let it out. There's no fear. We just trust our voice. We trust our expression. And that's a possibility. Living in this culture and stuff and comparing ourselves to other musicians, we gain these filters, right? These filters of fear and belief systems and self-judgment and trauma. And when those filters build up, when we bring the breath and in the attention of the voice, no longer is it a wide open flute, it goes through these filters, and those filters have a certain frequency and a sound as well. And so we get to hear through the sound through those filters. And again, that's more of the vocal awareness work. You can start seeing what's there. And the coolest part about vocal work is that you can start to bring up unconscious and subconscious subtleties and stories, and you can bring them to the conscious with sound and release and heal and transform them.
Without all the hours and hours of analyzing.
Right.
Could you give us an example of what that, especially for somebody here who maybe is feeling a little skeptical, or like, what does that mean, the frequencies of the sound, or like a tangible, the subconscious and unconscious, like how might that?
Okay, so sometimes like our conscious stories are like, okay, this was my childhood, this is what happened here, here, and here. We kind of have that conscious, right? Some of the, like a subconscious or an unconscious thing would be like, oh, so pre-verbal, before you could remember things, certain things happen to children that start us on our way to our belief systems and certain strategies and habits that we live by. So some people may be like, I was really shy and I'm not quite sure why. Something could have happened in the crib when they were, calling for mom, and using their voice really didn't make a difference, right? But they can't remember that way back then. It's unconscious or subconscious. So these are things that you can get to with
the voice,
and release some of that stress and trauma from not being picked up as a child when your voice wasn't heard.
Wow.
And you may think like, oh, I don't like to sing, or I don't express myself with my voice because it doesn't feel
weird.
Safe. Yeah, it's weird. It doesn't feel safe. I'm not good enough. All these things. But sometimes unconsciously we don't know what that story is.
Yeah.
And so the sound. So everything's a frequency, right? So everything's vibrating. Our bodies, if you study quantum physics, and everything's a frequency, okay? Everything's a measure of a frequency. The body's a denser, slower frequency. Sound is a little faster frequency. And so everything is a ripple of sound. So if we look at just a song, and we looked at it through, we studied like the sound waves of a pop song, it would have kind of ripples of frequencies of vibration. And our voice does too. And that's what's so healing about it, those frequencies, those ripples. And our bodies have sound too. All the organs, everything has this frequency.
Definitely.
So it is very scientific.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, because I think sometimes we can start talking about raising our vibrational level or frequency, and there might be some people who, for that, they're like, I don't think so. But there is actually scientific evidence. And what I love is a friend of mine also does sound healing, and he shared with me recently a study, I forget where it was, but there's just more and more evidence showing that, particularly around sound, and how healing it can be, and the effects and impact it has.
For sure.
And my own experience of what Rebecca's sharing, and the unconscious, subconscious, and conscious is, I don't remember exactly so tangible, but I remember one night and working, what were we doing? Was it when we were doing the koshas of the body?
We might have.
That evening, that there was one.
Was there a resistance that was?
Yeah, that wasn't my huge resistance night. I had a big resistance, but anyway, I just remember there was we were doing an exercise and toning through the body and toning through different layers more than just even of the body. And I could tell in one of them I just had some resistance that just...
You can feel it. It's like this, that's the part
more constriction, more rigidity.
Yeah, it wasn't moving.
Yes.
There wasn't like a flow there, and you could feel it.
And from a physical standpoint, that totally lives in our tissues. It will lead to more adhered fascia, more less muscle glide, less mobility, to bring it into really practical terms. And that was what I found, and was beautiful to work with that, and doing some on my own in the practice outside of class of working with that sounding it, and what can be released, what else is possible.
What else is possible? I love that you brought up how it densifies the tissues.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what happens, is that as we have a stress, something that stresses out, or a story, it builds up in the tissue. And what does that do to our voice? The whole vocal instrument constricts, and our voice changes, our sound changes because of this tension. And we think we can't sing, or we can't express with our voice because of this constriction. And when we just start letting that go and freeing that fascia up and those muscles up, we realize we've had a voice all along.
And there's so many of us, particularly men, but particularly women. I know that there are men out there as well, but I can think of a lot of women clients, especially a few clients that have come in recently for me, and one of their main goals is to be able to stand up confidently at all times and say what they want, speak up for what they need. And working with this vocal work is a huge way to really help that come through.
It sure is.
In a way that feels easier. Yeah.
So let's see what else. I have a song called "Your Voice Matters," and it's just what you just talked about. Women standing up and saying, "I have this message I'm called to give, but I'm so scared to do it." And there's this inner voice of self-sabotage that comes up, and not trusting our bodies. And I think it's cool what you do is helping find that release in people's bodies, so they can trust their bodies. And building up this vocal awareness helps people trust themselves to go up and say, I'm going to sing this song, I'm going to give this message, however they want to use their voice. And let the sound, just trust their sound.
Trust is huge. When that is there, that's what I find, the words can flow. And that's what's magnetic and captivating, and makes others want to listen.
The tone of your voice. So that's another thing I work with, is helping people tune in. What's that tone? Just recently, I was doing this toning practice. It's called the 7 Steps to Love. It's a map. It's a vocal map. And I was doing this one, and I started down at the bottom. The first 2 sounds are sa and re, and then I was noticed, and they represent different areas of love development in our lives. Well, one of them, I started to feel this very familiar feeling when I was singing Ray, of just kind of a slight exhaustion, of over trying, and having this, just this low-grade exhaustion in the tone. And I could hear it, and I was like, what is that? So instead of staying there, I just went up the scale, kind of like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, up the scale, and then I came back down, and then toned it again. And just toning up and down, the ascending and descending scale, released the exhaustion, and the sound and the tone sounded so different.
That's fascinating.
And I noticed what else happened was I felt different. So not only did the tone was different, that I was just like, I had released that sense of over trying and exhaustion just through sounding out.
Awesome.
Basically the scale.
That's cool.
And
that's
that
powerful.
Is really tangible.
Yeah, that is really tangible. And I know I can relate to that over-efforting, over-trying, that exhaustion, which it doesn't feel good. And to be able to, I don't have to journal for an hour, talk to a therapist for whatever, right? Those things are also useful, but just another tool of just sitting and using your voice to help that release and shift.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's awesome work.
Is there a number one, like if somebody's wanting to get started working with their voice more or experiencing this more toning, what would you recommend, or like how could they start on a regular basis?
I would start with just a simple Om. And the sound of Om can be chanted Aum, okay, kind of defining those three sounds, Aum. And you want to do it as you take an inhale. You want to think ah, and as you let the sound out, you let out ah first, you go to the O, and then close your lips, and really let the lips vibrate. And this doesn't have to be a big, strong voice. It can just be subtle, it can be soft. You want to be really present with it. And once you do that, you want to stop and listen to the ripples and feel what that sound has just created for you in your body and mind. What I've noticed, it really quiets the mind and creates this a depth of stillness. So it's very good to do if you're to just explore your own sound and the silence in between the sound. It's a really good thing to do right before, like if you have to get up and speak or teach or sing. It just calms you. Instantly.
And I appreciate too the step of after just sitting in the stillness and feeling that internal sensation, because I think that's really the biggest key.
It is.
Because if you just make the sound Om and carry on about your day, you kind of miss the point. Because all of this really is, again, it's coming to that embodiment, how do we feel that internal sensation? And that vibration that happens from saying that will resonate within you. And where does it touch? Where does it not?
Said, So I would give like 30 seconds to a minute and a half. To really
just
listen
sit
before you go to the next Om.
Oh, even before the next, And that's a great, simple, tangible, easy practice.
Really simple, but so profound.
That's what I found. Some of the most profound things are just simple. It just requires doing.
Exactly.
Well, more being, right?
More being. Yes, exactly.
Because I'm like, well, I don't have 30 seconds to sit between my Oms. That's the mindset I get on. Rebecca, thank you so much. Anything else you want to share about sounding and vocal healing and that we didn't?
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
There's some things I have coming up. One is there is a free call. There's a free community call. We're going to explore a little bit more of our sound, of our things that sabotage us from actually walking forward with expressing ourselves. So this call is called Permission to Express.
I like that.
And so that is something you're welcome to join me on. And
and when is that call happening?
That is happening April 16th.
April 16th, okay.
And then just before we started...
And I'll put the link for the call so you can...
Oh, good.
Yeah, sign up.
On my website as well, there's a little tool that you can use. It's called Unlock Your Power. And it's 40 questions that you can use, that you use your voice to say the question, and then you sit in the stillness with it. And then you journal. And it's the vocalizing of this question that just opens up awareness to where you might be blocked in your vocal instrument and start to build that sense of vocal awareness.
That's awesome, and that's a great way to be able to learn where to start if there is a block, and how do you feel that, and just going through that tangible. And what is your website?
RebeccaAbraxas.com.
Okay.
All A's in my last name.
And I'll put the links as well, so you don't have to worry about spelling. So you can get that, and it's called Unlock Your Power. Awesome. I'm going to have to check that out.
And the way to use it is just use those questions, and what if sound came up instead of the actual words to journal? So after you ask a question, sit in the stillness 30 seconds to a minute and a half, and what if you could respond to that question with sound rather than words? So just another way you can use the template.
Yeah. Cool. So go to RebeccaAbraxas.com to check out more about Rebecca, and I imagine you have some of your music up there. And check out her music. Rebecca has a beautiful, beautiful voice. She's a wonderful musician. So listen to that and check out the Unlock Your Power. And I'll be curious to hear if any of you, what you take on from this interview, and if you take on the practice of bringing in the Om, what do you notice? Or even when speaking with others, start to notice what is resonating within you after you speak, whether it be speaking in front of a crowd and you feel nervous. What's happening inside your body from those sounds, or with your children, with your family, with your loved one? Just noticing how that
vocal awareness can be developed, like you were saying, in every aspect. You don't have to just be singing. You can be talking to your children. That's a big one. Notice what comes up there.
Oh, man. I don't have children yet, so, we'll see.
Getting up in front of a big audience.
Yeah.
A lot goes on there. What's happening with the sound? What's happening with your mental stuff? It's interesting work.
It is interesting, and it's powerful work. I'm so grateful you're doing it, and thank you for coming and for doing this interview with me. And so cool. We're complete. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Take care.